Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today I want to discuss how Howard University Professor Jide Iwarere, who perjured an emergency evaluation petition, tried to have my citizenship revoked. Now, I'm an American citizen. I'm a naturalized U.S. citizen. There's never been any challenge to my citizenship, by the way, and I'm not in any immigration proceedings. Of course, I have to mention this because we found, I read the story um, of Diaz Morales, who was actually a natural born U.S. citizen. She was born here in the United States, but somehow ICE, the government had filed a a removal order against her. They'd instituted a removal proceeding against her in January 2025, and she was subsequently, arrested, detained by ICE for a long time. Even though she was born here, she had a birth certificate. However, of course, the government has since dismissed that. They've dismissed the removal proceedings. They've ended it, and she was given her U.S. passport. She has a U.S. passport now. She filed a U.S. passport for a U.S. passport, and she does possess a U.S. passport now. So that was a mistake. The government makes mistakes, and sometimes people are not aware of the immigration law, and they see a little clause and they think they can exploit it, especially uh, you know, unscrupulous cops in, for instance, Maryland, Montgomery County to be particular. Um, Miss Morales, of course, was arrested in Maryland, right? It was ICE had just detained her, requested her papers. She didn't have a passport. Half of American citizens do not have possess a passport, right? Many Americans don't possess a passport. Really, you need a passport if you travel. Most Americans do not travel outside. They don't travel internationally. If you're traveling out of the country, that's when you do require a passport. Now, so I'm a naturalized United States citizen. I'm a citizen, right? And I have no history of mental illness. I did an earlier video explaining that uh, someone with a severe mental illness that has an associated with associative harmful behaviors, meaning the that mental illness can cause them to uh, engage in behaviors that are harmful to themselves and others. So, meaning they're a public safety threat. Those two conditions have to coexist. Then they are inadmissible for a green card and citizenship, right? So, having a severe mental illness, for such as schizophrenia, that can cause one to um, be suicidal and homicidal, grounds to actually deny green card and citizenship, right? Those people are inadmissible, right? Um, Now, there can be a waiver of inadmissibility that can be filed, but again, what I'm discussing is not legal advice, So anybody with immigration issues should contact their attorney. I'm not your attorney, and I'm not licensed to practice law in the state of Maryland or any state in the United States, even though I am a lawyer, right? But I only provide this is just for information, right? General information. And of course, I'm talking with respect to my issue, how Howard University Professor Jide Iwarere fabricated documents in collusion with Montgomery County Police, rogue Montgomery County Police, specifically Demarcus Coleman and Sergeant Charles Drengwitz. So they fabricated incident reports on May 14, 2023 and May 16, 2023. The objective was to uh, declare me a public safety threat based on a previously undiagnosed medical ailment, right? And that I had a mental illness, and that this mental illness causes me to pose a public safety threat. Now, again, remember, under U.S. immigration laws, people with a severe mental illness and whose mental illness can cause them to be a public safety threat are denied, they're inadmissible to the United States. They can't obtain green cards or citizenship, right? So this was the route that Jide Iwarere was trying to take, right? I just told him that, wow, I just got this great government job, right? I was just promoted. I just had this, there are offers all over the place. And I just told him how valuable my top secret TSSCI clearance, national security clearance was. And, this was a conversation I had with him, right? And apparently he was envious, right? He was envious, he was triggered, he was angry. And so he'd been conniving, he'd been planning this stuff for a while. And so he files this fabricated emergency evaluation petition, right? So just to let you know, if you're a green card applicant and before you obtain your green card, somebody files an emergency evaluation petition, right? For instance, in the state of Maryland, I don't know what other states, what their requirements are to be emergency petitions, then you're not going to get your green card. You're going to be denied your green card and your citizenship, right? Because an emergency evaluation petition is for someone who has a severe mental illness and that makes them a public safety threat. That means they are currently suicidal and or homicidal, right? So you're not going to get a green card. So Jide Iwarere, when I was living alone in my home, not in his house, I was not going through any mental illness, any stress. I've done videos explaining all of that. So he files this, and he uses a crooked judge, Judge BBM Berry. She's a Black American female judge who graduated from Howard. Jide Iwarere has taught at Howard for past 40 years. Two of his kids are lawyers, attorneys, so one of them is an attorney who works for the federal government for a long time. So they knew how to help him, right? So it was something that he did in collusion with others, right? So he fabricates this emergency evaluation petition of something that never occurred, right? Completely fabricated. And this judge fails to give me notice or a hearing, right? Anything that's filed against you, because an emergency petition is an accusation, anything that takes away your right in America, because you have a 14th Amendment due process of law right. The government can't take away your life, your liberty, your property without due process of the law, and you have equal protection of the law as well. They can't discriminate against you. They have to treat you like every other American, right? So they can't say, well, because you have a mental illness, or even presume you have a mental illness. By the way, whether one has a mental illness or not, that's within the realm of what's called your privacy, right? It's protected by your privacy, your family privacy, protected under HIPAA rules, right? So it's within your zone of privacy. It's nobody's business. Now, unless you pose a public safety threat at that particular time, so that's why it's called an emergency. There's an extenuating circumstance, an exigency that that requires a government or a judge to get involved, to do something because there's danger, right? Like somebody's about to be killed, right? Either, the evaluee is about to kill themselves or to kill someone, right? So that's why a judge would approve an emergency evaluation petition. But this judge failed to provide notice. Anytime an accusation is made against you in America, you have a right to receive notice, and you have a right to have a hearing, right? To dispute it, to say what, to hear what the charges are, what the accusation is, and to defend yourself, to dispute it. And then you are entitled to an impartial tribunal. I was denied all of these, right? So Jide Iwarere actually violated my constitutional rights, right? So he got into a conspiracy to violate my constitutional rights under 18 USC section 241, a deprivation of rights. So in any event, he most likely bribed this judge, Judge BBM Berry, because why would she break the law? Why would she risk her law license and her reputation as a judge and lose her job by doing something that was illegal, right? It was illegal, it's obnoxious, it's abhorrent. So in any event, and my family didn't know. My family is in Nigeria. None of my family members knew. I have an aunt, my mom's first cousin, in America. She's a psychiatrist. She's licensed to diagnose and treat mental illness. She didn't know. Nobody knew. So Jide Iwarere with Montgomery County Police, they filed this fabricated emergency evaluation petition. Sergeant Charles Drengwitz fabricated an incident report claiming I attacked somebody, robbed somebody, something crazy that never happened, and I wasn't aware of. Right? It never happened, and I'm not charged with any of that, by the way. But it just goes into an incident report to get a judge and medical Department of Health in Maryland to get involved and to detain me. And so after I was besieged and assaulted, I have permanent injuries as a result of Jide Iware's perjured emergency evaluation petition, in which everything he wrote was a canard, a complete lie, a complete fabrication, right, from his demented mind and depraved heart. And then I was detained for 3 months, right, in aggregate. As a result of this fabricated emergency petition by Jide Iware, I was detained wrongfully by Judge James Bonifant for about 450 days because they tried to coerce me, right? Make life unbearable for me, to make me surrender to their demands that I lie that I have a mental illness and I accept some kind of treatment for mental illness that I don't have, right? So, so in any event, initially when I was detained from May up until August, while I was detained, Jide Iware then goes to contact my mother. My mother's in Nigeria, 85 years old. She's never taken me to see a psychiatrist. I'd never seen a psychiatrist. I was no mental illness, never given medication, never experienced any symptom of a mental illness, right? I've done videos clarifying that, Maryland state psychiatrist, of course, then stated that no, I don't have a mental illness, right? And apologized, of course, asserting that, acknowledging that I have a legal lawsuit against Jide Iware and the state of Maryland, right, for violating my constitutional rights and for defamation. But in any event, Jide Iware then tries to persuade my mother, right? Telling her lies about how I was arrested for drugs. Didn't say it was a mental illness, but say that I'd been taking drugs, hard cocaine, and things like that, and I was now irrational. That I was, in Yoruba, what she was telling my mom was "unso koto koto, unso koto koto." So that means he's irrational. He's just saying gibberish. He's not rational. He's incoherent. And so my mom, they tried to get her to write a letter to me, in the way they could deceive me, so I too would listen to her. Meanwhile, the state of Maryland had held me, saying, hey, they'll not let me go to work, that if I accept, because they have doctors in jail, that if I accept, they'll just let me go back to work and they'll give me a note saying blah, blah, But I'm a lawyer. Apparently they thought I was an idiot, or they thought I could be bullied or intimidated. And I came to see these are the atrocities that the racist state of Maryland, its racist government officials, perpetrate against Black Americans, minorities, indigent folk. They actually did it to a cellmate that I had. This guy had just had an altercation, went to the post office, and that post office, another black person calls the cops on another black person. They abused him. Even in his mugshot, you could see them beating him because the police officer's hand is on his face, right? And they abuse him. They force him. He calls his mother. They say, oh, if you take medication, that they will release him. And that goes into your records. Once you take that medication, it goes into your records that you receive treatment for mental illness, right? So that was what they were looking for. So Jide Iware, he had told me that he volunteers for the police department, and he claimed that he was chairman of the Clarksburg police prisons. The people there denied him. They said they don't know him. Jide Iware tells a lot of lies. Apparently, he might be delusional. One of the things that the doctors eventually told me when they observed and saw that everything he'd written down, because I hadn't seen the document he'd gone to file. He went to court. Yeah, it was actually a court document he went to file. I hadn't seen it. Nobody in my family saw it. They realized it wasn't that my conduct, my behavior was not consistent with the things he had said. So these psychiatrists know, they'll figure it out if you're lying to them, right? So they realized everything he'd said was a fabrication. And then they said, well, he has, that Jide Iware has dementia, but he's in denial, right? I hadn't seen what he had written. But in any event, I was locked up. While locked up in Montgomery County Correctional Facility, I was actually tortured, right? I was they would place a Klieg, like something like a Klieg light on me 24/7 that I couldn't see. I didn't eat for almost three weeks, right? Um, so they deprived me of sleep. They did all sorts of things, way conditions, dehumanizing things. They strip search you all the time, that you're naked. I'd never experienced this before, right? I'd never been arrested in my life. This was the first time. Imagine, and they were doing it because Jide had lied and said, well, that I was a public safety threat, that I had this severe mental illness that made me a public safety threat. And so I was calm. I refused. I refused to budge. But I saw that it's a pattern. It's something Montgomery County Police, their police officers, including uh, uh, the mentally challenged, educationally intellectually challenged DeMarcus Coleman. Of course, I know this from the his screed of his charge statement, in which he could barely stitch a proper sentence, right? And of course, he wrote that I had an undiagnosed mental disorder, which of course the Maryland state psychiatrist laughed off and said, he's not qualified to say that. And they said, no, I don't have a mental illness. They don't see anything, and they apologized. And of course, it's atrocious. But DeMarcus Coleman is a Black American, so be careful. Immigration does not favor. Apparently, there's certain Black Americans who do not want immigrants to come in, especially those that are hardworking, because they think they're challenging them for their opportunities. They're denying them of their opportunities. So this was something that DeMarcus Coleman did with Jide Iwarere. With Jide Iwarere, entered into a conspiracy with others, right? So when he's being charged by the federal government, that's what they normally charge corporates with, right? People who offenders, that's what they're charged with by the federal government. Conspiracy makes the crime more severe when they say you entered a conspiracy to do something, right? So it's a legal term. But Jide Iwarere did not succeed, and that's what he did. So he violated a lot of laws. It's a civil rights violation. It's a human rights violation. Of course, he committed perjury because everything he wrote was it was a malicious lie. He willfully made material misrepresentations under oath in a court document, and to deprive me of my civil and constitutional rights. It's actually a crime. It's also a federal crime. I'm an American citizen. I didn't obtain my citizenship through fraud. I obtained it legally. But importantly, though, for people who might have some kind of apprehension that the people they're living with might emergency petition them, or people who already have a naturalized or have their green cards or naturalized as citizens, who might be scared. And I'm not trying to cause you any anxiety. Let me just clarify: ex post facto revocation of citizenship is there's no grounds for ex post facto revocation of citizenship. That means events or circumstances that occurred after someone successfully became a citizen do not constitute legal grounds to denaturalize or to challenge someone's citizenship. Again, it's the Department of Justice, right, that has to go and file a lawsuit, right, in court, and has a very high burden of proof, right, to prove it's clear, unequivocal, and convincing grounds that evidence that proves that the naturalized citizen, obtained their citizenship through willful misrepresentation, through fraud. That's material. It has to be material, meaning they would not have been given that citizenship if this was known to the officer, to the government, if the government knew this. So, and again, so it's with regard to mental health and other conditions, it has to be conditions that existed at the time of the decision that they were granted citizenship. For instance, that they did have a mental illness at the time of this naturalization. In this case, Demarcus Coleman, in his charge statement, he's writing that he has an undiagnosed mental disorder, right? So something that was unknown, something that that had happened later on, or it could be a condition that maybe because of conditions they suffered a traumatic condition after they became naturalized. They successfully became naturalized citizens. They're not grounds. They don't constitute legal grounds to revoke citizenship. For instance, if somebody after they became a citizen, if they joined the military and then they suffered injuries and suffered PTSD, it became a severe medical condition that they have to receive treatment. No, they can't revoke their citizenship because that's something that happened after they became citizens. So it has to be something, right, that existed at the time they became citizens, prior to them becoming citizens. The requirement for the government, what the government is looking for when they grant somebody citizenship status, is that they are of good moral character. They're not a public safety. They don't pose a safety threat to themselves or the public or the welfare of Americans at the time they're being granted citizenship. So whatever happens after they successfully become citizens, they don't constitute legal grounds to revoke citizenship. I hope this is helpful. So for people who they're students who probably want to become green card holders and citizens, they should be careful who they call family. So I'm very fortunate that when I came to the United States, Jide Iwarere didn't invite me to the United States. I didn't stay with him when I was in law school or any of my schools. I went to different universities. He didn't give me a dime. I'm very fortunate, because if I had stayed with him and he had gone to file this emergency petition prior to me becoming a green card holder, right? If he had sponsored me to come to America, which he never did, right? And he had decided to file an emergency petition against me while I lived in his home, then I would be denied a green card. I would not have been able to possess a green card, right? So be careful who you think is your family and who your neighbors are, who is your friend. Be very careful. These are dangerous times. If you are ever emergency petitioned, you will not be. It will. Let me not say it's impossible, but you will not have a higher bar to scale in order to obtain your green card. This does not constitute legal advice. My name is Olurotimi Osha, and I'll keep you posted. Thank you.